Sure. So I'm going to walk everyone through the website because essentially the website is a guide to the project. So if you'd like, you can walk through the website with me. It's https / Auravana Auravana.org, auravanaproject.org. So I came to this direction about 12 years ago. I was interested in the Venus Project, the Zeitgeist movement, and a different configuration of society, a configuration of society where there was limited trade or no trade and no state coercion, essentially. So we currently live in a specific configuration of society. We currently live in the market state. In the future, we will live in a different configuration of society. And this could take anywhere from 50 to 150, maybe 200 years, but we'll eventually move into a community type configuration of society where there's very limited trade and there's very limited coercion. Right now, the coercion extends quite deeply into society because, of course, trade and the market and power over others, which is represented by the state, create a host of bad behaviors and incentivize bad behaviors. And so coercion steps in to create a somewhat stable society. As we advance as humans in our understanding of ourselves and the world in which we live, we'll eventually come to see the planet as a common heritage. And we will slowly begin to develop informational systems that represent that common heritage. And Auravana, I think, is one of the first steps toward that future goal, which could be near in the near future, but I expect it's anywhere from 150 to 200 years in the future. So how does society operate? Society operates based upon standards. The market has standards and the state has standards also. All policy is a standard, all business documentation is essentially a standard. So all societies operate based upon standards. Auravana Project is essentially a standard setting organization to develop this new configuration of society, which we need to begin thinking about right now in order to safely transition over the next coming decades to a community type configuration of society where there's a limited market, if not no market, and a limited state, if not no state at all. We're slowly beginning to see this transition in terms of the incorporation of AI. Of course, we don't need AI to realize this transition, but I think it will be helpful in the near future and certainly the distant future as AI integrates more greatly into the market and certainly into state decisioning. So the project is essentially based upon standards. And as you can see, we have a set of standards. All societies can be understood by four primary systems. So all societies can be separated into these four primary systems: a social system, a decision system, a material system, and a lifestyle system. These are the four domains of any configuration of society. And once you understand this, you can begin thinking about our current market state more closely. And you can begin engineering, because you understand the fundamental systems of society, a new configuration of society. Of course, there's also a project plan in the market state. There are many project plans. Every state has project plans, and every business has its own project plan. Slowly, we will transition, as we see the world's resources as common heritage, into a common project plan for our global community. This will take time, but it is the eventual future. And of course, we have a system overview describing the whole system. So I'm going to go to the standards page and just walk you through the standards. These standards have been in development for 10 years. As you can see here, this overview image, system overview. And the system overview essentially describes this new configuration of society and some of the problems of our current configuration of society. Of course, the project plan and all the documents go more greatly into this, but the system overview is a good overview to essentially the purpose of the project and what we hope to realize in the future. The project plan includes two sections. It's the project plan and then the project execution. The project plan, essentially, we're describing project planning. A lot of people say what we're developing is far-fetched, utopian. Of course, it's not utopian if you look out into the distant future. Right now, it might seem that way. Again, if you look at the standards, a lot of the content in the standards themselves are current standards that are operational right now on our planet. It's just that no one yet has taken all this information and integrated into a unified information set so that we can begin engineering this new configuration of society. So the project plan document essentially describes what project planning is and what project planning is like in a community type configuration of society. The project execution describes contribution, because a community type society, of course, is based upon labor, and that in community is based upon contribution. And it describes a set of lists that we need to execute in order to realize the project, because all projects are based upon a set of lists that are executed. And then the transition, because we are transitioning from one configuration of society over a number of decades going into the future into a new configuration of society. So then we have the primary standards. We have the social system standard, the decision system standard. Some people then say, well, where is the economic system? Well, an economic system at a higher level is a decision system, and an economic system is just really decisions about the acquisition and transformation of resources into goods and services, or needed goods and services, or you could say the coordination of resources. Then we have the material system. So the material world around us, the physical environment around us, that's, of course, separated into two systems: the actual material system describing what materiality is, and then how we live within the material system. Right now, we live in a variety of different environments based upon our market state culture. In a community type configuration of environments, we live in integrated or total habitat service systems. A habitat service system is just another word for city or village or town. It's a habitat service system, HSS. We use the word habitat service system. Sometimes we use the word city. Habitat service system is a more technical term. And in a community type configuration, these cities are essentially networked, and we share resources and information in a community type manner based upon community values, understandings, and information systems amongst this network of cities. And then, of course, we have the lifestyle system standard, which essentially describes the life phases of life, not only within our present configuration of society, but also a community type configuration of society. And it also describes to a certain extent the direction, which is encompassed within several of these standards, including the project plan and the social system. But what's the greatest state we can experience in life other than, or if love, it's also flow. If any of you have experienced flow, it's one of the most amazing states and experiences we can feel in life. So why not facilitate that state in our whole population? Of course, community would do that. People living in community would live in a greater state of flow throughout all phases of their life. The 3 phases or 4 phases of life right now and in community are essentially the same. You have the nurturing phase. You have the education phase. Right now, it's essentially the schooling phase. In community, it's more considered education and learning. Schooling is slightly different. Then you have in community the contribution phase. Right now, you have employment. But again, in community, people aren't being paid to do work. So you have the employment phase, which is right now, and then you have the contribution phase in community. And then right now in life, you have the retirement phase. And then in a community type configuration of society, you have the leisure phase. And of course, you can continue working well on into the leisure phase if anyone chooses to do that, but it's referred to as the leisure phase. So here are the standards. They're all freely available. You can, of course, acquire also the print versions, although I don't recommend acquiring the print versions yet, except if you're interested in the system overview, which is the only one in both color and black and white, because we've been working on the standards for the past year, a little bit over a year. And aside from the system overview, the other standards are quite more developed. So you can download, I would highly recommend if you're interested downloading the free version. Over the next 3 to 6 months, we will release the next version of the standards. I'm quite pleased with how they've turned out. Almost all of the issues that we've had with the prior version are resolved. We now are at APA 7th generation citation, so we're quite excited about that. The citation in the earlier versions was quite lacking, but we wanted to be able to get our content into universities. And so we needed to bring the content up to university level standard, which is what the next generation of the standards really is. I feel that with the next generation of the standards, we can begin accessing universities and educational institutions. And that's quite a big that has been quite a big challenge for us, but with the next version of the standards, we will have achieved that. So we have the system overview. System overview provides a good introduction. The project plan is essentially this version of the project plan is slightly different than our current working group's version of the project plan. This version of the project plan describes an approach and then direction and essentially an approach and a direction. So an approach is basically project planning, and the direction is the fulfillment of all of our objective common needs. And again, this sometimes gets confusing with people who have been indoctrinated into the market state mentality, where we just basically have wants and needs are forgotten of. Of course, if you're a spaceship engineer, needs are one of the first things on your mind. If you're planning on going into outer space, or you're planning on going to any other planet, you're dealing with habitats, objective human needs are significantly important. We all have objective common human needs. And then a community type society then says within that we have preferences. In the market state, you essentially just have what you can purchase, and then that just becomes what you want. So we have visualizations of all of this information, and I'll come to those later where we have figures, but that's essentially the project plan. And then we have the project execution, and I'm reiterating these because it's important to understand that we're engineering not only our current version of society on a daily basis, but we're also engineering a new version of society. And so it's so important to understand these four fundamental systems. The project execution, of which the project plan and the system overview are additional documentation. Then we have the project execution, essentially describes contribution and the execution of the project, and then a little bit about transition. This document is significantly improved and different in the next version of the standards. Then we have the social system. What is a social system? A social system is essentially a social navigation system where we navigate together. We have a direction, an orientation, and approach to every social system. And the direction of a community-based social system is the fulfillment of our common needs, restoring our environment, and also and essentially providing for our common needs based upon our common heritage resources. So you have the direction, which is the fulfillment of common needs. You have an orientation. Another word for orientation is values, essentially. What values are orienting all of our decisions? And then you have the approach, and the approach is essentially a systems-based approach. The methods that are selected are systems-based methods. You have the critical and the analytical methods. So you basically have critical thinking, critical reasoning, logic, and then you have rational science, and you have experimental science to help inform the decisions that we take with verifiable information and empirical information. So that's the social system. Then we come to the decision system. Again, you could look at it as the economic system, but it's really a decision system at a higher level. And here is where we do economic calculation. We do protocol, programmatic decisioning. In the future, artificial intelligence, this will be subsumed greatly by artificial intelligence. Right now, we're just talking a little bit about the mathematics and a little bit about how we can basically program decisions so that they lead to optimal solutions for everyone living on our planet now and well into the future. And the type of mathematics that we're dealing with here is Kantorovich and Leontief type matrix mathematics. And so we can begin, as this is a unified system, we can begin doing these sorts of calculations as other people have thought about in the past, but we now have the ability to do it with all of the information that we currently have on the planet. So that's the decision system. And then we come to the material system. The material system, again, is subdivided into two parts. We have the material system basically describing materiality and measurement therein. And then we have the habitats, because we essentially live in a habitat, integrated total city system, or an integrated habitat. And then we have the lifestyle document, and that's it for the standards. Now, in order to fully understand anything in terms of looking at it as a system, everything has to be visualized. So that's what the Auravana project has done. We have figures for every single standard. You can search the figures here on the Access Figures page, and you can search them with list view results. You can search them with grid view results. We have, how many figures do we have? We now have over 2,175 figures separated into all of the standards we have available. So we have them for the system overview, we have them for the project plan, we have them for the social system, decision system, material system. We have a few in Spanish, and we have a few in Portuguese. Of course, the system overview we also have in Portuguese, and within the next month, I'll be releasing the system overview in Spanish. So we visualize everything. If it's not visualized, essentially it's not understood. So you can type in anything using Boolean search here, and if you'd like to, you can very easily use Boolean search. Right here, just so you know, these galleries are separated by last added. So if you want alphabetical order, you can just use Boolean, like model-search, because all of the figures start with the word model, and then they're separated into the standards. So if you want by alphabetical order, you can do model-project, and that will give you either in grid view or list view all of the models in alphabetical order. And we do have a lot of figures, 2,175, not only visualizing a community type society, but also visualizing our current configuration of society and visualizing the transition to a community type configuration of society. Of course, what is a standard setting organization hope to do? We hope to have organizations, universities, cities in the future begin adopting these standards or partially adopting these standards. One thing I have to say, if one part of this, because they are a unified standard, if one section of the standard is misunderstood, it could lead to misunderstandings throughout the remainder of the standards, because it is an integrated, unified model, and it does represent an entirely different configuration of society than the configuration we have now. So there are a lot of gaps in people's understandings of how this works. And sometimes those gaps not only lead to a misunderstanding in one area, but misunderstandings throughout the entire system, because it is such an integrated system. So right now we don't have any organizations or even villages that have adopted the standards, though with the next version of the standards, I think pursuing the educational tract in the future, maybe distant future, we will begin having organizations adopt these standards. So of course, in the material environment, we live in habitats. And so this is basically a graphic of how we might live in the future in these habitats. And each one of these is an integrated environment. So an integrated city or village, and they're networked so that resources flow amongst them. So here you can see on the left, you see a mineral bioarchitected habitat. Then you see a mineral constructed, also mineral architected habitat. In the one on the left, there are bioconstructed buildings. In the second one the second one from the left, they're all mineral constructed buildings. Then those are both the second one from the right is a low to medium density. The one on the left is a medium density. And then the third one from the right is a low density rural habitat, mineral constructed. And that uses, on all of them, the outside circular essentially has restorative agricultural practices, where this is a succession of animals and also a succession of plants growing to provide both protein and carbohydrates. So a lot of habitats don't think about the integration of animals and plants, and restoration agriculture, restorative agriculture, centrifugal farming does. And so that's been incorporated into these habitats. And then on the right, this is all Elizabeth's work right here, pretty much. And then on the right, we have a bioconstructed bioarchitecture design, a low density rural habitat. And this was designed for the Crow people in Brazil. And so here you can see a diverse network of these habitats, and you also see mining operations, because these habitats contain minerals and mining will need to be continued. You have light production within the habitats and some medium production. Of course, heavy production in general is done outside of the habitats. This graphic right here shows you population density and also technology application level. And you can incorporate a variety of population densities with a variety of these technological application levels and integrate them into a community type configuration of society where there is a habitat network as such. Now I'm going to go over the different types of habitats. We have the Aura curve habitat, if I have time. So the Aura Curve habitat is essentially a rural restorative habitat for 8 families, 10 hectares, 1 habitat service system, and we can go through it here. I recommend not using the Edge browser if you're browsing our work. The Edge browser, if you're using Edge, unlike the other browsers, will black out or red out these PDF areas. Throughout the website, there are these PDF areas, and it'll tell you that we're trying to phish you. We're not trying to phish you, so I recommend you use Chrome. I haven't completely put this, Microsoft Edge might block this content on every one of them, but I'm slowly doing that. So you can always download the brochures here. So this is just a basic overview brochure. Then we have the site plan brochures here. And you can go through the site plan. It's basically a restorative, the outer 2 circles are restorative agriculture. And then here's the architectural engineering for the Aura Curve building right here. And so we have the drawing list that Elizabeth has completed. So this is essentially the building. And then some renders of the entire habitat and the building, our level of completion. You can download if you want freely. Our project is CCBYSA, so you can download all of these if you'd like. You can share them, and if you'd like to contribute to any of these habitats, we'd greatly appreciate it. Here's the Lumion file, here's the AutoCAD file, and here's the Revit file for the Aura Curve building. I think the AutoCAD one also includes the total site plan. So one other thing, if I go back to standards, I just want to mention one other thing. Sometimes people miss this, that there are a few of these standards that have additional content right here for the project plan. You can also download the project planning flowchart, the oversized tables and the project plan lists. And for the decision system, there's oversized tables and the oversized decision protocol flowchart, of which we've taken the PMBOK and we've essentially redesigned the project management body of knowledge for a community type configuration of society. So then I'll go on to the Aura City, and here we have Aura City. So this file is only in Lumion right now, but 314 hectares of land, approximately 3,000 residents. Again, it's a medium type environment, not a city for 80,000 people yet. 1 habitat service system. Basically, we're trying to understand how we could live and prototype and begin doing studies of these integrated habitat service systems. And so here's the city itself. We have a few videos on the city, description of the sectors of the city. And then down at the bottom, so kind of what the city is based upon. You have different dwellings. Each of these circulars represents a different sector of the habitat, everything from production to recreation to cultivation to different types of recreation. So this essentially is the city, and then you can see a network of these cities and a mining operation. Again, the renders, and then the working group and the Lumion file at the end. And then I'll just quickly do the Aura Crao, which is an indigenous habitat, bioconstructed habitat. So again, a study, and then we have the DWG file and the Lumion file here. You'd like that. So in the end, what is our project? We're basically producing open source standards and open source habitats. When we have the actual, all of the BIM information for these habitats, then we can begin using the decision system where we can begin doing actual economic calculation to determine feasibility of these habitats and the viability of them going into the future. I do recommend also looking at the hashtag data structure. So this is essentially the data structure for the entire project, with hashtags and starting each of the key data concepts. So I'm not going to go through this here because I'm probably running out of time, but if you'd like to get a data structure view of the entire thing, I would look over this. What else? An iceberg analogy of society. This is a good overview, and it just shows you that every type of society is essentially an iceberg. You have the social system down at the bottom, and of course, what do most people see and experience and think about in their daily lives? The material system, and then the lifestyle they live at the body of the water. But there's also a decision and social system underlying all of this iceberg structure, of which the habitats and the material system we live in is just the physical expression. So Auravana Academy, we eventually hope to get our work into universities. I would also look at presentations and overviews. I've essentially done a presentation with Arslan, and that's kind of the when that comes up, that's the presentation here. So if you'd like another somewhat similar presentation to the one I gave here, because when I give presentations, again, everything's on the website. So our presentation is right here. Then we have everything's the work is done in a community type configuration of society via two methods. It's you have labor is done in two ways. You have working based upon information, and you have working based upon the physical environment. So here is the working group structure. This working group structure lags a bit, of course, because the documents have changed a little bit. So here's the working group structure. Every article is a working group, and then we have a coordinator for each of the standards, and a coordinator for each of the articles. So every article is one working group. And so you can look at the working group structure here. This is another data structure for the project. And then contribution procedures, we have partners, what we do, I won't go through that now. And you can also visit our team page if you'd like to visit our P-team page for the current contributors to the project. So I think that's a good overview. Of course, it's a societal engineering, societal building project, so there's a lot more to it, but that is a good overview. If you'd like a sitemap to the project, that's down here at the bottom. Our FAQ section also answers a lot of the FAQs, and we have a transition timeline and a historical timeline for our project. So I think I'll stop there. Thank you. I appreciate everyone's presentation.